Bucky O'Hare, the toad-fighting space captain, was created by Larry Hama, known for his involvement in the G.I. Joe Marvel comic series. The concept was developed by Hama in the late 70s, but the character's first official appearance was in the Continuity Comics series released in the mid-80s. The title was short-lived, with only 6 issues being released. Perhaps due to the success of Eastman and Laird's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in the late 80s and early 90s, the character was resurrected and reintroduced in the 1991 animated series Bucky O'Hare and the Toad Wars. Despite lasting one brief season, consisting of only 13 episodes, merchandise was released, including a toy line, clothing, activity sets, and 2 video games, one for the arcade, the other for the Nintendo Entertainment System.
Growing up, I didn't have much experience with Contra or the original Castlevania, so this was the game that defined Konami quality for me. I rented it numerous times from my local video store because I was a huge fan of the animated series. In fact, I owned pretty much the entire toy line, but those are probably at the bottom of a landfill.
On a positive note, I do still have a VHS tape containing 2 of the episodes from the series. The entire series was released in this format during the show's run in 1991. Unfortunately, the series has only been officially released on DVD in a few countries. I say officially because there is an overpriced bare-bones set being sold on Amazon.com, but there's no mention of a stateside release of the series on the official Bucky O'Hare fan site, nor on TV shows on DVD.com, so the legitimacy of this release is in question.
Anyway, when I got back into the NES, this is one of the games I was most looking forward to playing again. I never beat it as a kid, probably because I only had access to it on weekends after school, but more on that later. Let's get to this.
Both games were released by Konami in 1992 during the peak of the animated series. While the arcade game is a trademark beat-em-up in the style of The Simpsons or X-Men arcade games, the NES version is a fast-paced, side-scrolling platformer. In both games, you can play as Bucky and the crew of the Righteous Indignation, O'Hare's ship, including Deadeye Duck, Jenny, and Blinky. In the NES game, you can also play as Willy, the human child who ends up in the Aniverse, the world of the Toad Wars. Both games are based on the animated series, and one prominent character from the cartoon adaptation, Bruiser the Berserker Baboon, is absent.
Berserker Baboon!
With speed and agility being emphasized in the NES version, Bruiser's omission is justified. However, Bruiser would be a perfect fit for the arcade game. The story starts off with Bucky and his fearless crew being attacked by a Toad squadron and kidnapped. As Bucky, your first goal in the game is to rescue all of your comrades, who are dispersed across 4 planets. Like Mega Man, you have the option to play the stages in whatever order you wish. Also like Mega Man, the order in which you tackle the stages may have an impact on your ability to progress in certain levels. For example, Blinky is rescued when you defeat Toadborg on the Green Planet. Blinky's bomb attack is necessary to destroy the ice blocks that impede your path on the Blue Planet. The gameplay involves traditional side-scrolling in all directions, plus shoot-'em-up action akin to Section Z or Pry Fighter for the final levels. The variety of characters, none of whom play exactly like the other, further keep the game from being monotonous. Each character has unique abilities that you need to utilize in certain parts of the game. The standard attacks are variations on a regular laser. However, charging your attack by holding the B button accesses these special abilities. Bucky can super jump, Deadeye can climb walls, Willy has a super laser, Jenny produces an energy ball that can be manipulated with the D-pad, and Blinky can fly. You can collect power-ups during gameplay that will increase your special ability meter. The control is tight and responsive. Navigating for even the toughest terrain is unhindered by lag or slowdown. Bucky can shoot not just horizontally, but vertically. The other characters, however, have a designated attack path, with the exception of Jenny's charged attack. One minor annoyance is that, while rapidly pressing the attack button, you can unintentionally activate your charge ability. Though this is a small quibble, it could cause many aggravating accidental deaths. Once you have rescued your crewmates, your reunion with your team is short-lived, as the Righteous Indignation is once again besieged by the Toad Army. This time, besides the titular character, You retain blinking in your command, and you have to navigate the prison block in order to, you guessed it, free your imprisoned mates. The kink in the works this time around is that the Air Marshal has turned them against you, and you have to fight your allies in order to break the spell and return them to normal. If you've progressed this far in the game, you will have noticed that this game is very hard. Like many games of the 8-bit era, there's plenty of tricky platforming segments such as descending lava traps, similar to the lasers in Quickman stage, instant death spike pits, and slippery ice jumps. Later in the game, especially once you've recovered your squad in the jail, you'll encounter puzzle sequences where you'll have to put your allies' abilities to use in order to get to the next screen. Particularly of note is a revolving room that rotates clockwise one click at a time. Your position on one point of the maze will determine your success or failure, as your placement when the room rotates could result in victory or instant death. This puzzle will test your patience, as it will take trial and error and several attempts to complete. All of these factors contribute to the game's difficulty. However, the game is forgiving in that you have unlimited continues, and checkpoints are accessed when you get to the next part of the level. If you are unsuccessful and die during a boss fight, unlike the Ninja Gaiden or Mega Man games, you pick up right at the beginning of the fight. This is a blessing and a curse, as any power-ups you picked up during the course of the level are annulled when you continue. Sometimes the game is gracious enough to leave a life power-up after a continue prior to the fight, but most of the time this is not the case. It is in these instances that your skills are put to the test, especially in later boss fights when there are multiple enemies to defeat, while also avoiding lasers and projectiles. Unlike the TMNT game, the enemies in the comics and cartoons such as Alligator, the aforementioned Toadborg, and the final boss, the Air Marshal, are well represented in the game. The difficulty of the bosses ramp up as the game progresses. While the first two bosses are easily beaten by mashing the B button and jumping at appropriate times, the real test of your skills comes when you reach the bosses in the prison, particularly the Toad airship. Though the game is one of the more difficult in the NES library, it is beatable. When capturing the footage for this review, I knew that I had to accomplish what I never had when I was a kid.
Come on! Yes!
Through sheer determination and after many deaths, I finally succeeded in my childhood quest. With the defeat of the Air Marshal and the destruction of the Toad mothership, Bucky and his crew escape victorious. However, the battle may be won, but the war is far from over.
What more needs to be said about Bucky O'Hare? It's easily my favorite game from the NES era. Finally completing the game after all these years is a huge accomplishment. Playing for the game again further enhances its standing among the benchmarks of the system's library.
Though the storyline is repetitious, it is made up for with excellent control, varied gameplay, with the ability to play as multiple characters, faithfulness to the source material, and one of the best video game soundtracks of all time. Despite the difficulty, the game is just plain fun. If you're a fan of traditional platformers in the vein of Mega Man or the Batman NES games, you should give this a try, but be prepared for a hair-pulling but not unfair challenge. In the words of Deadeye Duck, let's
Croak some toadies!